Hey guys, welcome to another talk. Title of this class, The Formidable Power of Loving Kindness. The Formidable Power of Loving Kindness. Okay, let's start with a story. Many years ago, there was this old nun in Thailand living out in the forest. Her home was a small little cottage with a thatched roof. And it was also the thatched roof was also the home for quite a few creatures. Centipedes, scorpions, insects, rats, and so forth. They didn't bother her because her primary practice was loving kindness towards all beings, great and small. She was at peace with the world. Nothing was harming her. She enjoyed herself in the forest, hanging out by herself. Now, on this particular day, a nice, bright summer's day, she had left the front door open for some breeze to come in. A little hot in Thailand. And on that lovely day, a nice big cobra made its way up to the roof, into the thatched roof, looking for rats. A nice meal. And while she was sitting in her practice, she heard this scuttling sounds in the roof. She didn't pay any attention to it because she was at peace with all creatures. So the snake was looking for the rats, and somehow it slipped off the rafter and fell right in front of her. And falling in front of her, it raised its head, ready to strike. A little bit scared what was happening. Oh, the cobra. The nun's response, however, was not fear. The nun's response, looking at this beautiful, magnificent creature in front of her, was simply to think, oh, you sweet, sweet little thing. I hope you're okay. Did you get hurt? Just peaceful love flowing towards this cobra. And the cobra, sensing this incredible love coming towards it, closed its hood, went down, and slithered out the open door. No worries, mate. That, my friends, is the formidable power of loving kindness, which places us at peace with the world around us. All creatures, all beings. We will look at that slowly in the course of this class. Okay, right. The quest for love. The quest for love is as urgent and as powerful as the quest for happiness, power, pleasures, possessions, glory, and so forth. It's in the race with everything else. We want to be happy, we want power, we want wealth. Love is part of the race. Yeah, the quest, urgent and powerful. We all know intuitively, deep intuitively, that true happiness, lasting variety, true success of the enriching variety always rests upon deep, nourishing relationships, loving, endearing relationships. We know that intuitively. And yet, it is only the few who ever enjoy mutually satisfying, enriching, cherishing relationships. Only the few, even though everyone knows that's what's important, only the few actually experience the value, the blessings that come from mutually nourishing, cherishing, enriching relationships. Right? Okay. Why is this? Why is it that only the few experience it, even though everyone wants it? It is because the only way to experience this form of living is by learning to live wisely and lovingly. But Master B, aren't we living wisely? No, my darling, not living wisely. Think of Shakespeare's Romeo and Juliet. World famous Romeo and Juliet. They fell hard for each other, deeply in love. Yeah. Despite Friar Lawrence's repeated cautioning that untamed passion always leads to disaster, because violent delights end in violent ends. Untamed passion always brings disaster. Yeah? But these guys were not paying any attention to what Friar or the priest was telling them, Friar Lawrence. He was cautioning Romeo repeatedly against his melodrama and his ungratefulness. And he was cautioning Juliet against her rash responses towards anger and frustration. But Juliet at the time was 13, just a little spring chicken. And our man Romeo was 16, also rather young. And so they paid no heed to his guidance, rushed straight into this romance, and entered their next rebirth prematurely. Read the story if you don't know it. Okay? What this tells us is that we need to be extremely cautious in relation to willful blindness. Willful blindness, especially when investing our emotions in intimate relationships. Willful blindness, not paying attention to what's really happening, causes disaster. Untamed passion brings disaster. That's why only a few experience mutually enriching relationships. Yeah? Not living wisely. Now, because most of us sleepwalk through life, not really conscious, because most of us sleepwalk through life, we fail to realize that love is not just this enriching feeling, this elevating feeling. It's not just a feeling. It is an art of the exquisite variety that is inseparable from personal refinement. Yes, personal refinement required. So even though we may have watched hundreds of films on love that went haywire, read hundreds of books on love that went a little screwy, and listened to thousands of songs about love that didn't really work out. All these fiascos. We're seeing it, we're reading about it, we're hearing about it, and yet we don't see the importance of loving correctly or learning how to love correctly. We don't see the importance. And why don't we see this importance? It's because the majority of beings on the planet are more interested in being loved than in learning how to love correctly. More interested in being loved than in learning how to love correctly. That's the big mistake. So how do we love correctly? How do we love wisely? Well, only through personal refinement. Because through personal refinement, we come to understand that it is only from a sophisticated mind, not an uncultured mind, a sophisticated mind, that we learn to be truly loving and lovable. Because to desire to be loved without qualifying for it, as in being lovable, is not happening. If we're not really lovable, who's going to love us? We want to be loved, but our qualities are obnoxious. How is it possible? No can do. So, this obsession for being lovable is seen especially in men when they pursue headlong pursuit towards wealth, power, position, status, because then they would be eligible to be loved. Men, yes. And what do women do? They're focused on their appearance, primarily. Yeah, to make themselves attractive. So that, wow, then they're eligible to be loved. Then they say enough. The games both sexes play to be loved. What do? They developed pleasant manners, interesting conversations. They're helpful, modest, humorous. Yeah, they put on all these different charms. They play these different roles in order to be loved. But do these qualities, do these realities, wealth and pleasures and possessions and so on, and being humorous and interesting in our conversations, is this enough for holding any relationship in the way it's meant to be held? Is it really? No. No. Look around you. In the absence of personal refinement, nothing works. We are sunk. That is why only the few ever get to know the joy and the bliss of true loving. Because personal refinement is not on their radar. Only the few, but the majority is not on their radar. There's another huge mistake most people make when it comes to love. And this is to believe that love is an external factor instead of a faculty that needs to be cultivated under proper supervision. Most people believe it's an external factor. What does that mean? It means that the majority of beings believe that to love is easy, so easy. But to find the right person to love and be loved by, oof, that's where the challenge is. It's an external factor, not a faculty to be cultivated. What an incredible delusion, Lord. There is no activity or enterprise in this entire world that is undertaken with such enthusiasm, such hopes, such great expectations as intimate relationships. And yet, it is these intimate relationships that fail so frequently and so hopelessly, repeatedly. No activity or enterprise we engage in with such high hopes, and yet which fails so miserably again and again, lifetime after lifetime. Only because personal refinement is not on the radar, nowhere in sight. Wealth will make us happy, possessions, power, pleasant personality. It's not enough. It has never been enough. Let's see what this means. So, how does personal refinement redeem us, free us from this grief-inducing form of living? Grief-inducing. We want to be loved, but we're approaching it the wrong way. How does it redeem us from this grief-inducing form of living? Well, as I said earlier, it is through a sophisticated mind that we come to realize that love is an art, just as living wisely is an art that needs to be learned by us. And to gain mastery of this art, we need to approach it in the same way that we would approach any other art if we wished to gain mastery of it. Yeah, it's an art. It's not just a feeling. It is an art that has to be cultivated under proper supervision. How to love? We don't know how to love. So, what's the process required for us to gain mastery of any art, whether it is music, dance, medicine? What is the process required? The necessary rules we need to pay attention to? Well, the process required is threefold. Any art, you want to learn anything, you want to gain skill in anything, three things required. We need the mastery of the theory. Understand what you're doing, why you're doing what you're doing. Yeah? We need mastery of the practice. Both of these, goes without saying, require coaching. Not by yourself, require teacher. Okay? Goes without saying. We need the mastery of the theory, and we need the mastery of the practice, all under proper supervision. Just the theory will do nothing for us. Nothing. Yeah, we have to make the theory real, and it becomes real through practice, getting out there in life's playing field and putting the theory into practice. So just knowing the facts about ourselves, what we are in essence, just understanding what the world is about in theory is of no use. We need to apply this learning in our everyday moments. That's absolutely essential. Just think, you wish to be in Bali. Yes, vacation in Bali. You surf the net. Look at the photos. Look at the videos. But do you really know Bali by surfing the net, reading about it, thinking about it, looking at posters? You have no clue about Bali. Little theoretical knowledge, but that's nothing real. It is only when you get to Bali and you experience the people and the climate and the reality, that's when it becomes real for you. Not just theory, it has to be the practice. Yeah. So just knowing that we are supersonic, not enough. We need to practice in a manner where we can actually feel our power. Then the teachings come alive for us. Okay? Mastery of the theory and mastery of the practice. 2 requirements. The third we're coming to. Stay tuned. Once theory and practice blend together seamlessly, guess what happens? Guess what happens? Your intuitive faculty is aroused. It is awakened. It is evoked. Your intuitive faculty. That's when you are able to flow through this world with power and grace effortlessly. When your intuitive faculty is aroused, you become unstoppable in achieving your deepest desires. But it can only be sparked when theory and practice wed together. Seamless whole. Yep. Just think. Touch typing. I do touch typing. Pretty fast. No looking at the keyboard. Before you can touch type really well, you need the theory. QWERTYUIOP. Keys, yeah? QWERTYUIOP. Know the keys. Slowly, it becomes intuitive. It flows. It's so much better than tok, tok, tok typing. Yeah, so much better. Same with driving. First, the theory. Hey guys, you have mirrors. Look in the mirrors. Clutch, brake. Slowly, you become efficient. You can drive effortlessly. Theory and practice have to blend together. Then life becomes effortless. Otherwise, learning any art, any skill, remains effortful. And what could be the third requirement? The third indispensable requirement for gaining a mastery over any art. Well, unless you wish to be a dilettante or dilettante your entire life, just a dabbler, an amateur your entire life, which is not really skillful, the art has to be of ultimate concern. Nothing should be more important when you're learning that art. If you just do it once in a while, when you feel like it, never gain mastery. It has to be of ultimate focus and concern. Learning the keyboard, learning the violin. Full focus is required for theory and practice to blend into a seamless whole. Wishy-washy practice is no practice. It has to be our full focus. Then we gain mastery of any art. Okay? That's the third indispensable requirement. It is true for personal refinement. It is true for love. It is true for any other art. Three things, yeah? The process, three things. Theory, practice, and it has to be of ultimate concern. No distractions. No mañana. We'll do it tomorrow. No. So now we come to loving kindness. It's called metta in Buddhism. Metta or loving kindness. And what is loving kindness? Just being kind and loving? Loving kindness is an Olympic form of loving. Olympic. Yes, in the Olympics. It's an Olympic form of loving because it rests upon the deep desire for all beings, not just a few beings, for all beings to be well and happy and to achieve their full potential. That's what it's about. Olympic form of loving. It is not reserved to just a few, tiny few, and the rest of the world, who cares? Loving kindness is an Olympic form of loving because it rests upon the deep, unwavering desire for all beings to reach their full potential towards awakening. That's what it's about, loving kindness. Embracing the world. It has to grow boundless over time, to embrace everything alive and even the inanimate things. To love nature, the rocks and the sand and everything else. To love fully, unconditionally. That's metta, loving kindness. Love in its Olympic form, not piddly form of loving just a few people. Now, loving kindness, if we really understand it well, we see that it is inseparable from karuna. Metta, karuna. Karuna is compassion. Inseparable from Buddhism. Compassion. So why is it inseparable? Just think. When you really love someone, okay, your spouse, your kid, not your chocolate ice cream, your spouse or your kid, for instance, or your parents, would you not at the same time be concerned about their suffering, if they're suffering visibly. Yeah, they're ill. You love someone, you don't just wish them to be happy, you also wish to relieve them of their distress. That's compassion. To feel the distress of the world, not just a few people, the distress of the world. It's ablaze with suffering. Look, the wars, the violence, the prisons, the hospitals, the dysfunctional relationships, misery everywhere. And yet, we live in our own little cocoon. Not skillful. So, loving kindness is always coupled with, wedded to, karuna or compassion. It is not just the desire for all beings to be happy and joyous and reach their full potential for awakening. It is also this unwavering desire to do whatever we can to assist in whichever way we can those who suffer around us. It's a proactive way of living, not just wishing for them to be well, not just wishing for them to be free from their misery, but actually doing something about it. And what's the best way to serve? By first serving ourselves. Personal refinement. If your mind is all cluttered with I, me, and mine syndrome, no loving kindness, no compassion, only selfish living. And selfish living equates with misery. Yeah? So we need to refine ourselves so that through that sophisticated way of perceiving the world, we are in a position to take skillful actions that help the suffering masses, lost in the delusions. Okay, that's easier said than done. Yeah. So how do we do that? How can we serve? Through personal refinement. We need to understand that more important than education, more important than wealth, more important than success, has to be the intensity and the persistence towards loving life in its fullness. That has to be our primary motivation for being alive. Yeah? To love and to serve tirelessly, skillfully, effortlessly. More important than our education, our wealth, possessions, pleasures, and so forth, is to learn how to love well, the fullness of life. Because although we are all born with the capability for experiencing life at its best, we are born with that capability. That capability has to be cultivated. It has to be cultivated through living wisely, living in a loving, compassionate, beautiful fashion, through the perfection of the perfections we are talking about. Then only. But to do this, to refine ourselves, to make ourselves eligible for experiencing life at its best, here's something you may not have really thought about. We need to dishabituate ourselves. Dishabituate. Look, read my lips. We need to dishabituate ourselves from pleasant as well as unpleasant experiences. Master B, what that means? What does it mean? What does it mean to dishabituate yourself from pleasant experiences? Let's talk about that first. Yeah? What does that mean? Why is it important? Familiarity breeds complacency. Understand that rule. Familiarity breeds complacency. So, to dishabituate ourselves from pleasant experiences means to stop taking our life for granted, to stop taking our blessings for granted. Because when we do that, we're bored, we're restless, we want something else, never satisfied. Yeah? When we are habituated to pleasant experiences, the pleasant blessings, profound blessings, it curbs, it stifles, curbs our curiosity for doing better, for knowing better. Unless we learn to perceive our moments in a novel and insightful manner, unless we learn to perceive things from fresh perspectives, how can we ever spark the vast possibilities for an even brighter future, for improving ourselves? How do we, if we're habituated to just being in number mode, or is it dumb mode? Are you understanding? Familiarity breeds complacency. We are too complacent. Oh, we got a nice house, we have a nice job, we have a good family, we have our limo, vacations, shopping sprees. Okay, now let's just settle into this complacency. Yes, in zombie mode. How often do you give thanks for the air that you breathe, for the food that you eat, for the shelter you have, for the smallest of pleasures? How often do you give thanks for that? Complacency breeds mediocrity. Mediocrity. It closes the doors to an even brighter future, an even brighter present. How can we possibly value and give thanks for the blessings if we're not even conscious of them? How can we possibly marvel at the beauty of just the dust particle coming out, flying around in that sunbeam coming through the window? How do we marvel at that? How do we learn to live like a child again in wonderment? Gone. That's why we need Netflix. That's why we need shopping sprees for things we don't need. We are bored out of our mind. We need to dishabituate ourselves from pleasant and unpleasant experiences if we are to truly live. Understand? Please understand. Okay, right. Now let's go on to why should we dishabituate from unpleasant experiences, unwholesome experiences? Well, the same rule applies here also. Familiarity breeds complacency. When we have been living unconsciously for our entire life, pretty much, doing things which have not really served us our entire life, what happens? We can become familiar with that way of living. Even though it's destroying us, it feels right. It feels comfortable. And so we accept it. Even though the emotions are treacherous, it feels right because it feels familiar. We'd rather walk on that familiar road, which is causing us grief, than take that other road, that unknown road, because that unknown is even more scary. It's more treacherous in our mind. But unless we explore the unknown, how can we possibly open up to the possibilities available to us? How can we possibly experience a happier and healthier life if we're living in stagnation mode? We have to dishabituate ourselves from pleasant and unpleasant frequencies, thoughts, words, feelings, and actions. Only then can a brighter future open up for us, not otherwise. So, to dishabituate ourselves from unpleasant frequencies implies being committed to living consciously. And when we live consciously, we no longer settle for less. We deserve more. We are spiritual beings having a human experience. We're not human beings having a spiritual experience. Understand that. We need to reclaim our birthright. Okay, next. We need to realize that time that is not well invested, time that is not well invested in knowing ourselves, in growing ourselves, in evolving to a higher form of living, that time is wasted. And that wasted time eventually catches up with us. Sooner or later, wasteful living catches up with us and it roots us in misery, emotional, physical, psychological afflictions, all kinds of afflictions. At my age now, 69, I see my friends and family who are even older to me, or a little younger to me. I see how they have lived their entire life devoid of personal refinement and the tragic consequences they're going through, especially in their old age. Tragic. Time that is not well invested in knowing and growing ourselves into a better version of ourselves ultimately catches up with us and causes us great grief, great regrets, great remorse. It's devastating what's going on. So many people, hospitals, relationship fiascos, loneliness, sadness, no personal refinement, no loving kindness on the radar. We are bored, we are lonely, we are depressed, we're disillusioned, countless beings. All because learning has stopped. No more learning. When learning stops, fresh experiences stop. And when there's no freshness in our lives, there's no inspiration in our lives, it's demotivating. It's destabilizing. It is extremely stressful. Yeah, that's how most people are living. Learning has stopped. Personal growth and learning has stopped. And therefore, there's nothing fresh in their lives. And therefore, they need constant stimulation, entertainment, distractions, running around. Just feel alive. Hallelujah. Please understand that midlife crisis is no different from midlife sameness. Where there's no freshness in our lives, there's only suffering, major suffering. Here's a little story. Angie enrolled herself in a meditation class that lasted for a year. Not just meditation, even the philosophy. Yeah? She enrolled herself in a meditation class that lasted for a year. Once the class was over, guess what she did? She stepped out of her marriage of 20 years. 20 years, marriage, just walked out. When asked why, you were valued by your husband, you were safe, you were secure, things were going well for you, everything was perfect, or so it seemed. Why? Guess what she said? To her friends and family, here's what she said. You know, the reason I enrolled in the meditation class is because I was among the walking dead. I was among the walking dead, and I needed to know what it meant to love again. My husband is a beautiful human being, but we're not compatible. I don't love him. He may love me. I don't love him. He deserves to be loved by someone who could really appreciate him. I don't really appreciate him. He's a nice fellow, but we're not compatible. I need to find someone that I can love and be loved by. It has to be compatible. I have lots of love to give. I'm a lovable person, but the match has to be there. Yes. It's not just an external factor, also an internal factor. What's the moral of the story? We all need to step into largeness like Angie did, and that too boldly, because most of us are among the walking dead, zombies. But before Angie could actually walk away from the safety and security of her marriage and leap into the unknown, she needed the right nurturing. And the right nurturing came from the right learning environment. In the absence of the right learning environment, people remain stuck their entire lives in dysfunctional relationships, in a job they detest, in situations that are not serving them, they habituate themselves to those unpleasant realities. They don't know what to do with themselves. So, please understand that in the absence of love and wisdom together, they can't live separately, they have to be together. In the absence of love and wisdom, no amount of wealth and pleasures and possessions can compensate for it. None. Our life becomes intolerable. In the absence of love and wisdom, life is a little bit miserable and intolerable. So, loving kindness needs to be practiced, not just towards a few, but towards life in its fullness. It is an Olympic form of loving. It is the superstar virtue of all virtues, loving kindness. Why? Why is it a superstar virtue? Because it elevates us to a higher form of living, a grander form of living, from which life begins to reveal its profound dimensions to us. Why? Because we qualify for it. We become eligible for it. We'll see what this means in a moment. Stay tuned. Loving kindness, always coupled with karuna, compassion, and wisdom. It's all blending together. Remember what I've said before, that the 10 perfections cannot be practiced separately. They're all together. They have to be practiced together. Wisdom without patience is no wisdom. Wisdom without virtue is no wisdom. Yeah? Everything has to blend together. So, what does it mean that it elevates us to a higher form of living? A grander form of living? Just as fire thrives on air. Remove the air, no fire. Just as fire thrives on air, we thrive on rich, vibrant experiences, because novelty and adventure, they nourish and nurture us in ways that safety and predictability can never do. In our complacent zones, no can. Just as fire thrives on air, we thrive on enriching experiences. Experiences that nurture us from the core of our being. But to do this, we need adventure. We need to step into the unknown. That's where the possibilities lie, in the unknown. When I stepped out in 1983, after graduation, and came back to India, I was in the unknown. I had no introductions to any teachers. I had no introductions to any places where I could practice. I was in a totally unfamiliar environment because I had lived out of India for 18 years. 18 years, I'd almost forgotten the language, Hindi. And I was willing to do it. And only by stepping into the unknown did the wildest possibilities open up for me. I could never have planned it from my complacent zones. Impossible. Goes against universal laws. We have to step into the unknown, the uncertain, the unfamiliar, because that's where possibility dwells. Vast, immense, Immeasurable possibilities dwell in that zone, not in the familiar, not in the safety, not in the known. It's in the unknown dimensions that we discover life's mysteries and miracles. The wildest things which opened up for me by having the courage to step boldly into the unknown. No amount of wealth could have done it. No amount of possessions could have done it. Nothing. Just trust in the good Lord. Step in. That is why deeply engaging experiences and lifelong learning, the desire to know ourselves and the world we live in, it enriches us far more profoundly than any wealth could ever do, any pleasures could ever do. It ranks right up on the scale of happiness, more than wealth and pleasures, because engaging experiences, deeply enriching experiences, lifelong learning awakens us. It awakens us to the magnificence that dwells in and around us at all times. This world is sparkling with divinity, and we don't see it. We don't see it. Zombie mode cannot see it. Sophisticated mind can see it. To have a sophisticated mind, to cultivate that sophisticated mind, we have to dishabituate ourselves from pleasant as well as unpleasant experiences to know what else can be possible for us. It is imperative. And loving kindness is that catalyst, is that fuel, is that high octane fuel that opens doors to life's amazing dimensions that no amount of wealth and pleasures can ever do, cannot. All right, let's just finish with a couple more stories. Plus, let us look at the 11 benefits, profound benefits that the Buddha shared with us when we make loving kindness an integral part of our lives. 11 supersonic benefits. Any idea? We sleep well. How many people have sleep problems in the world? Too much. Calms us down. We sleep well. We wake up well. How many people slither out of bed? Oh, Monday morning. Oh, another day. We leap out of bed. We wake up joyful, grateful, ready to love even more every day. And third, we no longer experience nightmares. Unconscious telling us that we are off the track and we need to get on the track. Nightmares, morbid dreams, restless dreams, garbage dreams. No, our dreams are beautiful, enriching, sometimes even prophetic, beautiful. We rest well, dream well, wake up well. Come on, you don't need any pills. Don't need to slosh in the night to drug yourself to sleep. 3 supersonic benefits, physical, basically, or emotional. Sleep well, wake up well, no evil dreams. And what's the fourth one? We are endearing because we're loving, deeply compassionate, deeply wise. And we are endearing to all human being cakes. Beans. Beings? Yeah. Yeah. Even the weirdos, even the nutcases love us. Remember Connell that I spoke about in one of the classes? That fellow, the veteran from the war, Biafran War, who was in college with me? He was a pretty wild guy. Everyone feared him. I didn't. And he loved me for some reason. And because he loved me, and he just, because of my vibes, of course, I was able to talk to him that night like a mother talking to her child. You are drunk and you're stoned, now go to bed. If anybody else had said that to him, they would have lost a few teeth and possibly ended up in a hospital. I could speak to him freely. Why? Because I was endearing to him. Yeah. Even crazies, wild people, difficult people, they come into our radius and they bring out their finer side. Here's another example. I started a charitable trust many years ago in the 1900s. Charitable trust. Now, the Charity Commissioner's office in Mumbai is not an easy institution. It's a government institution, Charity Commissioner's office. People fear it. Ugh. Not me. To register my trust, I had to meet the Charity Commissioner. Why? Because most people establish charities to launder their black money. Yeah? Yes. They have ulterior motives for starting a charitable trust. And so they are scrutinized. And therefore they go there with palpitations. I had nothing to hide. I was teaching yoga and meditation. I started a charitable trust on the advice of my accountant. I wasn't really interested in it, but he said, oh, please do it, then it'll be good for you. Okay, so I had to register it. On the day of the registration, my accountant and I went to the office in Mumbai. Do you know what a peon is? He's on the lowest rung in an organization in India, the peon. He's like the handyman. He does things which nobody else wants to do, handles paperwork and so forth. Although he's lowest on the rung, he holds immense power. Immense. Because if you rub that peon up the wrong way, oh, I can't find your papers. Sorry, I don't know where they are. They're lost. Trouble. I approached the peon. My accountant was on my right side. This guy who was into bribes and corruption. Yeah. Most people approach the peon with a wad of money. Yeah, please get my papers out. I need to see the commissioner. I have an appointment. And then the papers come out mysteriously from a pile, which I don't know how they store these things. I approached him and I said to him, listen, I've come here for the meeting with the commissioner and I would like my papers, please. He just looked at me. I had no money in my hand. None. I was not intending to bribe anybody. He just looked at me. He scanned me with his, is this guy going to whatever? He took out my papers in a way that only a magician could. from under a stack of papers. He knew exactly where my papers were. Took them out from the stack, gave it to me without asking for bribes. And he said, please wait over there for just 10 minutes. And the assistant charity commissioner would see you. Okay. My accountant's eyes started going around and around in circles because he had never seen that before. Then, when I entered the office, sat down, my accountant was on my left side. And this fellow asked me some questions. Why have you started the trust? What are you doing with the trust? And so forth. And I answered the questions openly, eyeballs. Now, these guys, because of their experience, years of experience, they know who's authentic and they know who's bullshitting. Yeah? They can tell. They mastered the art. So he said to me, after just about 5 minutes of conversation, he looked at my papers, he looked at me, asked some questions. Please wait outside for 15 minutes and you can collect your papers. Thank you. I didn't think anything of it. So since we had to wait 15 minutes, my accountant and I went out of the office across the street into the chai shop, had a cup of tea. And he said to me, Behram, I have never, in all my years coming to the charity commissioner's office, I've never seen this kind of the reality happen. That the peon gave you your papers without a bribe, without any fuss. That was the first miracle I saw. Usually when I come in for my other clients, I have to pay bribes. And this fellow is telling you he's going to give you your papers in 15 minutes. For the other clients, I have to come over here 15 times before I get the papers. What magic have you done? No magic, buddy. Just being myself. After 15 minutes, I actually got my papers. It was not just a bluff. Hallelujah. Loving kindness. No judging anybody. Just embracing all beings for the divinity that shines in them. Yeah? That's the fourth miracle. We all want to be socially in peace with the world. We don't want conflicts with anybody. So, loving kindness, fourth, brilliant. Fifth one, we're endearing even to non-humans, the creatures that live on the planet. Yeah, all kinds of creatures. They don't harm us. The bees, the centipedes, the snakes. No harming. Remember the story I said in one of my classes? When I lived in that cave and I was leaving, on the day I left, there was this huge Himalayan centipede that had made a nest right under my head, the space right under my head. Didn't harm me. I don't know how long it had been there. Here's another story. Remember, I have said to you that I've stayed in 4 different caves. 2 of those caves were scary. This one was scary with the centipede. The 4th cave I stayed in was also scary. The other 2, not so scary. Here's a story about the 4th cave. This was not in the Himalayas. This was in Maharashtra, outside of Mumbai, a couple of hours away, up in the hills. Pretty wild place, pretty wild. Hardly any water there. It was just a little stagnant pond, which I used. I boiled the water and used that. I was there for just 3 days. I couldn't stay longer because of the water shortage, not because of the other strange things happening. Over there, you could see all around droppings of wild dogs. Yeah, they're shit. Wild dogs running around. Not just that, snake skins. Snake skins all over the place. Snakes. And I was going to live in that cave. Why? I'm a little nuts. So I set up shop in the little cave with snake skins everywhere, wild dogs hanging out, and scorpions and centipedes. But I didn't anticipate what happened that night. In the night, I had my sleeping bag because it was cold at that time of year. Yeah. Guess what happened? My heart leaped into my mouth like this when these field mice came out from the woodwork, well, from the cave, and they started scampering all over me. Mice. They ran into my sleeping bag, on my head, everywhere. Dozens of mice. So I opened my sleeping bag. Guess why? Because if a snake was after them and it went inside my sleeping bag to get one of those mice, I would be in a little bit of a soup. So I opened the sleeping bag so that the mice could scamper all they want. I couldn't get rid of them. Yeah, they were scampering around, checking me out. And the snakes were there, very much there, but they did not harm me. They did not harm me. Neither did the scorpions, which I saw, neither did the centipedes that I saw. Nothing harmed me. I stayed there for 3 days and 3 nights. I would have stayed longer just to test my potential, but my potential wasn't supersonic because the water was not good. I couldn't handle the water there. Yeah, so I stepped out. But the point here is the fifth supersonic benefit is you go anywhere and you are unharmed. You live in safety. Why? Because I could not protect myself with a gun or a knife in these kind of situations. Only love, only caring, only compassion. That's the best immunity against harm. Yeah. Fifth benefit. Sixth benefit, the elements don't harm us. Yeah, elements, fire, water, air, earth, earthquake. Yeah. We are protected by the elements. You don't have any problem with the elements. Can you imagine that? We have no problem with even weapons or poisons. We're immune to those things. Immune in the sense that they don't come our way. Yeah, we're fully protected. The best protection there is. That's the sixth benefit. The elements do not harm us. We're protected, amazingly protected. Seventh benefit, because just think, when you really love someone, as an example, aren't you extremely vigilant in relation to how you could serve them better? You could love them better. You could elevate them from their difficulties. Yeah. Your focus improves. That's what happens. When you're really loving, your focus improves. Our mind is well focused, not distracted, because we're loving. We're enjoying life's simplest moments and giving thanks for them. Our focus is unwavering towards what really matters. When our focus is unwavering, that's the seventh point, guess what happens? we remain youthful. We begin to glow. Why? Because we are not expending our energy being scatterbrained. We're not putting in all that effort to achieve things. Because the mind is focused, our actions become effortless. We retain our youth. We begin to glow in our appearance because of the love that flows through us. It keeps us youthful, joyful, beautiful, healthy. That's the eighth benefit. Ninth benefit. Guess. Because we are focused on what really matters, which is personal refinement. Yeah, because we are loving life in its fullness. Our resonance, you'll be amazed that our resonance reaches the heavens. Heavens, plural. The gods of the lower worlds, lower heavens. Yeah? Spirits, spiritual forces. They can feel our fragrance. They feel our fragrance. We become endearing to them. And they protect us. Yes, these spiritual forces begin to protect us because we are vibrating on their resonance. What makes them into gods is high frequency loving, high frequency wisdom, puts them in the God realms, and they can respond to our frequencies because we are on the same wavelength. We are protected. I cannot even tell you how in such mysterious ways we now have been in dangerous situations, like maybe possibly with those snakes, or the scorpions, or whatever. How miraculously I have been saved from a brush with death on so many occasions, especially with my motorcycle riding on those days, driving in India. Whew. The most uncanny ways I could not. How did that happen? Well, you get connections. Yeah, that's the ninth benefit. 10th benefit is that at the time of death, before we pop off, no more regrets, no more grief. We've lived well. We've loved well. We feel well. No fear about popping off because we understand that popping off is really just a change in location and a change in form. No more this clay form, a different clay form, a different location. Today we're an Indian, tomorrow we're American, then we're Chinese. Spirit has no form. It has no location. It is everywhere. Yeah? So we understand that when we are in the transit lounge, waiting for the space shuttle, and getting on board the space shuttle, we go with a smile on our face, and maybe even a poem. There was a Zen master, noted for his poetry, and he was about to pop. And his students were weeping and wailing. Oh, great master, you're popping off. Yes, yes, I'm popping off. Please, one last poem before you pop. Are you guys nuts? I'm giving you so many poems and you still want more? Yes, yes, one more poem. So here's what he said. Life is thus, and death is thus. Poem or no poem, what's the fuss? Beautiful poem. Life is thus, and death is thus. Poem or no poem, what's the fuss? And pop, he popped. Okay, right. 11th benefit. 11th benefit. Once we get on the space shuttle and we are beamed into our next rebirth, even if we have not had any insights, even though we've practiced loving kindness, no insights, but we've lived well, then depending on the accumulation of merit, we are either reborn in the lower heavens, many kinds of heavens. Yeah. Heaven, Hawaii, doing some surfing there. Yeah. We're born in some good place away from the planet Earth. And when our time comes, we return, we come back to continue with the practice in a very favorable location. We will talk about karma and rebirth in the classes next year. Please stay tuned. Yeah, we go without fear. And when we popped, either in the lower heavens, hanging out there, enjoying ourselves, or if we don't qualify for lower heavens, we come back into this world in an extremely favorable context that supports our practice, towards awakening. Okay, these are the 11 benefits of loving kindness practiced daily. Please, on Google, just checky the benefits of loving kindness, and it's not within the scope of this class for me to give you a loving kindness meditation, but it is there on the net. Please download the meditation, what steps you need to take, and practice it, and see how brilliantly your life improves for the better. The loving kindness, once again, Olympic form of loving. Not a regular, ordinary form of loving. Olympic. Superstar virtue of all virtues. It elevates us to frequencies we cannot even imagine. The formidable power of loving kindness has to be a theory and also a practice. Please, kindly do yourself a favor and everybody else. Stay tuned for more. Over and out.